Have you ever felt invisible to someone who once saw the whole world in you? One day, their eyes stop searching for yours, their voice grows colder, and suddenly, you forget how to speak, not just in love, but even in English. This story isn't about losing someone. It's about finding yourself again, slowly, gently, through simple English words, small moments, and quiet mornings in Denmark. The silent change. It started on an ordinary autumn morning in Copenhagen. The city was quiet, wrapped in a thin layer of fog that softened every sound. The bicycles glided silently through the streets, and the smell of fresh bread floated from a nearby bakery. She stood by the window, watching him tie his scarf. He didn't look at her, not even once. It was such a small thing. But in that small silence, everything changed. Sometimes love doesn't end with a fight, or with a goodbye. Sometimes, it ends quietly, in the way someone stops asking how your day was, or forgets to smile when you enter the room. She could feel it, that invisible distance, growing day by day. And the strangest part? She couldn't find the right words to name it. Not even in her own language. So she turned to English, simple words. Slow sentences. Like breathing. That he doesn't look at me anymore. That I miss the way he used to smile. Maybe love is changing. She whispered them softly, as if speaking to herself could make the pain smaller. But the more she repeated those lines, the more real they became, and the clearer her heart sounded. You see, learning English isn't only about grammar or pronunciation. Sometimes, it's about finding a new voice when your old one breaks. It's about saying things you can't say in your native tongue. When love fades, words can save you, if you let them. In Denmark, autumn is both beautiful and lonely. The golden leaves fall slowly, like memories you can't hold on to. But in that stillness, something else begins to grow, the courage to face silence, and the strength to listen to yourself, because that's where healing begins, not when someone looks at you again, but when you finally look within. Morning coffee, empty seat. The cafe was the same as always, small, warm, and filled with the smell of roasted coffee beans. The same corner table by the window, the same soft Danish music playing in the background, the same sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. Only one thing was missing, him. She ordered 2 coffees out of habit. One for her, one for the ghost of a memory. The barista gave her a small, polite smile, the kind Danes give when they understand but don't ask. She sat down and waited, though she didn't know what for. She took a sip. The coffee was strong, almost bitter, and then, softly, she began to speak, in English. Good morning. How are you? She paused. The empty chair said nothing. Today, I drink coffee alone, she continued, her voice slow and careful. It's okay. Maybe it's a good thing. The words came out clumsy but clear. And that was enough. When you lose someone, you also lose the rhythm of your days. You forget the little scripts of life, the small talk, the laughter, the casual goodbyes. That's why learning English, for her, became more than practice. It became a ritual, a way to fill the silence with meaning again. Every morning, she repeated simple sentences while watching the people outside. He walks fast, she smiles, they hold hands. That I am here. That it wasn't just language. It was healing. Each word she spoke felt like a step forward, one that didn't need anyone else's permission. The cafe's bell rang as new customers entered, laughing in Danish. For a moment, she felt the ache rise again, that old loneliness whispering, "You're the only one alone." But then she smiled quietly, because she realized something powerful. Being alone didn't mean being empty. That it meant having space to grow, to speak, to become. And that morning, in a tiny cafe in Copenhagen, she began to find her voice again, one gentle English word at a time. The walk along Nyhavn. The afternoon light painted the colorful houses of Nyhavn like a soft dream. Boats rocked slowly in the canal, their ropes creaking with the rhythm of the wind. She walked along the cobblestone path, hands in her pockets, scarf wrapped tight. Around her, people laughed, took photos, and clinked glasses, but their joy sounded far away, like music underwater. She stopped in front of a bench where they used to sit. He once told her that Nyhavn was his favorite place because the water never judges, it just reflects. Now, she stared at her reflection in that same water. It looked calm, but inside, the current was strong. She took out her small notebook, the one she used for English practice. On a new page, she wrote, "He stops looking at me, but I must look at myself. That I am still here." She whispered those lines slowly, like an affirmation, feeling each word settle in her heart. For the first time, the English didn't sound foreign. It sounded true. When you practice English, you train your tongue, but also your courage. Every sentence you say is an act of believing you can be understood. Even when the world feels quiet. Even when love is gone. She watched a young couple walking by, laughing in Danish. Their happiness didn't hurt her this time, it inspired her. Maybe, she thought, I can fall in love again, not with someone new, but with life itself. Learning a language is like learning to live after heartbreak. You start with mistakes. You mispronounce. You forget words. You feel small. But then, slowly, you begin to understand more, about words, about others, about yourself. She looked up. The sky was pale blue, the kind that only lasts for a moment before turning gray again. But that brief color was enough. Enough to remind her that beauty still existed, even after someone stops looking. She took a deep breath and said out loud, slowly and clearly, I can walk alone. I can speak. I can begin again. And Nyhavn, quiet and golden, seemed to whisper back, yes, you can. The Danish sky and quiet thoughts. The next morning, the sky over Copenhagen was the color of soft steel, heavy, still, endless. It was one of those Danish mornings when the clouds seemed to sit right above the rooftops, pressing down gently, asking you to slow your breathing. She wrapped herself in her gray coat, made tea, and sat by the window. The city was calm. Only her thoughts moved. She opened her mouth and began speaking softly, in English, not to anyone. Just to herself. I am learning to be alone, she said, her voice trembled, then steadied. I am learning to listen. At first, it felt strange, speaking to no one. But soon she realized that her words weren't disappearing. They were landing somewhere inside her, like seeds waiting to grow. Every sentence in English became a mirror for her thoughts. That it's raining, that I feel sad, but sadness doesn't stay forever. In Denmark, silence isn't empty. It's sacred. The Danes have a word, hygge, for quiet comfort, for finding warmth in small things. She began to practice her English while lighting a candle, or folding her blanket, or stirring her tea. Each action had its own rhythm, each word its own piece. Science says when you speak slowly and clearly, your brain feels safer, less afraid of mistakes. Maybe that's why she loved these soft mornings. No rush. No judgment. Just gentle English words floating in the air like mist. Her heart, once full of noise, memories, fears, questions, began to quiet down, because healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sounds like your own voice saying simple things. I am here. I am enough. I am learning. She looked outside again. The Danish sky was still gray, but not heavy anymore. It looked like a blank page, waiting for her to write something new. She smiled and whispered, "Today is a good day to begin again." And somewhere between the clouds and her breath, she believed it. Learning to listen again. There's a strange moment after heartbreak when the world feels too quiet. Even sounds you used to love, the laughter of friends, the hum of the city, the radio in the kitchen, start to feel distant, like someone turned the volume down on life itself. That was how she felt in those early weeks. She didn't just lose him, she lost the rhythm of hearing herself. But then, one cold afternoon, as she sat by the canal with her headphones on, something shifted. She was listening to an English podcast, slow, clear, soft. The speaker said, "Listen with your heart, not just your ears." The words were simple, but they landed deep. She realized that listening, truly listening, wasn't about catching every word. It was about being present. And that's when she saw the connection. Learning to listen in English was a mirror of learning to listen in life. When you listen to another language, your brain doesn't just hear, it feels. It guesses. It opens itself to the unknown. And when you listen to your emotions, it's the same. You don't always understand them right away. But if you stay patient, they begin to make sense. So, every morning, she started a new routine. She'd play simple English dialogues while she cooked breakfast. "I'm happy today. I made a mistake. I will try again." She would repeat each line softly, like a mantra, letting it blend with the sound of the kettle and the clinking of her spoon. Science says repetition rewires the brain. But she didn't need science to know that repeating gentle words heals more than your language. It heals your soul. One morning, she paused the recording and just listened, not to English, not to the city, but to her own breathing. In, out, slow, steady, alive. Maybe that's the real secret of learning English, or of loving again. You don't need to understand everything right away, you just need to keep listening, slowly, kindly, patiently. And as she looked out at the soft Danish light spilling over her window, she whispered, "I can hear again." The little bakery lesson. It was a small bakery on a quiet corner of Copenhagen. the kind that smelled like sugar, cinnamon, and comfort. Every morning, she passed by it on her way to the metro, but this time, she stopped. The sign read, "Frisk-bagged broad, freshly baked bread." The windows fogged from the warmth inside, and she hesitated at the door, heart racing for no reason at all. She took a deep breath and stepped in. The bell above the door chimed. "Good morning," she said, softly, but clearly. The woman behind the counter smiled warmly. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" Her English was slow, careful. "One cinnamon roll, please." "Of course," the woman said. "Would you like coffee with that?" "Yes, please," she replied. That it was such a simple exchange, a few polite words, a smile, but to her, it felt like climbing a small mountain. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of making mistakes. She wasn't trying to sound perfect. She was just trying to connect. While waiting, she noticed how everyone in the bakery spoke softly, kindly. The older woman beside her said, "Thank you," with such warmth that it felt like a hug. She realized something. People didn't care about perfect grammar. They cared about presence. About sincerity. As she sipped her coffee, the woman at the counter asked, "You're learning English?" She nodded. "Yes." Slowly. The woman smiled. "That's the best way. Slowly means you're learning for real." Those words stayed with her. Slowly means you're learning for real. She thought about all the times she had rushed, in love, in language, in healing. Always trying to be better, faster, enough. But maybe life, like English, isn't about perfection. It's about practice. About trying again, gently. When she left the bakery, the wind was crisp, the sky pale blue. She whispered, "Thank you," not just to the woman, but to herself, because that morning, in that tiny Danish bakery, she learned more than a language. She learned to speak again, without fear, without rush, with heart. And as she walked away, the scent of cinnamon followed her like a quiet promise. You're getting there. One small word at a time. The moment of mirror. That evening, the apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make her feel lonely, but now felt almost peaceful. She stood in front of the mirror, her reflection soft under the warm light. For a long time, she simply looked, not with judgment, not with sadness, but with curiosity. She noticed the small changes, the gentler eyes, the calmer shoulders, the faint smile that came and went like a shy visitor. She whispered in English, "Hello. It's me." The sound of her own voice made her laugh, not because it was funny, but because it felt real. The mirror had always been her enemy after the breakup. Every glance used to remind her of what she had lost, the spark in her eyes when he looked at her, the warmth of feeling seen. But tonight, something shifted. The person staring back wasn't invisible anymore. "I see you," she said softly, and this time, she meant it. Learning English had done something unexpected. It gave her distance from her pain, and in that distance, she found understanding. Speaking in another language allowed her to express emotions without drowning in them. Each sentence became a safe bridge between her heart and her healing. She remembered one phrase she had learned from a Danish English podcast. at elsk sig selver begindelsen på en livslang romance. To love yourself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. She repeated it slowly in English, letting every word settle in her soul. Science says when you speak kind words to yourself, your brain literally changes. It creates new neural pathways of calm and confidence. So, she began to practice, not just English, but kindness. I am learning. I am enough. I am becoming someone I love. For the first time in months, she didn't need anyone else's eyes to feel beautiful. The reflection was enough. She smiled, a quiet, real smile, because when you stop waiting for someone to see your worth, you finally start to see it yourself, and that moment, that silent, sacred moment in front of the mirror, was the truest conversation she had ever had. When love fades, you rise. It was Sunday morning in Copenhagen, cold, bright, and still. The church bells echoed softly in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of rain and new beginnings. She sat by her window again, holding her warm cup of tea, and watched the world move gently outside. This time, she didn't feel the ache. She felt something else, peace. She whispered to herself in English, slow and steady. Love fades. But I don't. Her voice was calm, strong, almost musical. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes after heartbreak, the kind you don't see at first. It grows quietly, underneath all the pain, until one day you realize, you're standing again. You're breathing again. You're even smiling, not because life is perfect, but because you are learning to live honestly, without pretending. Learning English had become part of that honesty. Each word she practiced carried meaning beyond grammar. I am learning meant I haven't given up. That I made a mistake meant I'm human. That I'm okay today meant I survived. She looked at her notebook, pages filled with small sentences, new vocabulary, fragments of thoughts, memories, and courage. Every page told a story, of losing, of learning, of rising. Outside, the Danish sky began to clear. A single beam of sunlight slipped through the clouds, landing right on her face. She closed her eyes and smiled. Maybe love had changed, but so had she, because when love fades, it doesn't mean your light is gone. It just means it's time for your own heart to glow brighter. It means it's your turn to look, not at someone else, but at your own beautiful becoming. She whispered one last sentence in English, slow, clear, full of life. I am my own beginning. And in that simple moment, surrounded by silence, she wasn't just practicing English, she was practicing being alive.